Welcome, everyone. I'm RoseMarie Pierce, the Educational Director and Senior Formulator for Prairie Naturals. We'd like to welcome you to this Health First seminar on digestion and enzymes. And I hope you're going to have fun with me tonight as we take a look at how enzymes can improve our digestion and the roles that they can play in our lives, both internally and externally. And externally would mean through your digestive tract because it's actually external to the body's systems. So give me a minute and I will share my PowerPoint. Here we go. And we will just do it as a slideshow from the beginning. There we are. Healthy at any age, improve your digestion. Having a good digestion is part of having a healthy body and warding off chronic disease and also supporting slowing the aging process. So we're going to take a look at it all the way through the eyes, basically, of enzymes. Before I get started in that, I'd like to look at some of the benefits of a healthy digestion. I hope you like my froggies. I've added them in through this talk. So of course we know that the digestive system, especially the upper 2/3, is involved in aiding the absorption of key nutrients from our foods. But there's so much more to it. And one of the things that it really does is protect the small intestinal lining from damage and inflammation when there's undigested, caused by undigested food and toxins. So the small intestine needs to be part of the process of breaking these macronutrients down. And if they're not properly broken down, especially ones like proteins, the hard to digest proteins that we find in our grains, for example, or gluten grains, they can irritate and as completely undigested and irritate the lining. The biggest problem they're going to create, of course, would be a split in the lining, or leaky gut, as it's sometimes called. And that leads to even deeper problems within our system. The other thing that's so important is how it controls the overgrowth of bacteria and actually other microbes, both in the stomach and in the intestines. So what's happening in the upper digestive system, where the enzymes are working from the mouth to the stomach to the small intestine, really is going to affect what our microbiome in the large intestine is like and the health of that. So taking probiotics, of course, can be a good thing, working with foods that supply our microbes and support our microbiome is wonderful. But taking care of what's going on above that would be the first line of defense in supporting our healthy microbiome. Also protects from allergens and lactose intolerance. So the allergens mostly are going to be protein-based, just like pollen. And pollen can have a correlation with food intolerances, such as, let's look at, if you're allergic to birch pollen, you might be affected by certain nuts. Walnuts, I believe, if my memory is right, is one of them. And they have a similar protein that's found in the pollens, also found in the food. So having good stomach acid, having a good enzyme production is going to help the body remove those pollens. And of course, lactose intolerance can be something from birth, and or it can be something that develops over time when the small intestine is been damaged and has been broken down. Also, the effective removal of waste. Without digestion, without good digestion, good digestive enzymes, and a good amount of hydrochloric acid, we're not able to change our protein and our carbohydrates into their building blocks. What do you get if you mix flour with water? Paste. Also with proteins, if you don't break proteins down completely, they'll act, because they're macromolecules, they'll act like paste. And that paste dehydrated is constipation. So that's another really important part. If a person's having constipation and fiber is up and they're not dehydrated, so they're taking enough fluids, the next thing would be to do is to make sure they're digesting both carbohydrates and fat. So that's one way that you could tell maybe that digestion is poor. Another way would be if you see particles of vegetables and chunks of undigested food in the stool. Another one would be with fats, is if the stools are floaty and oily, then that could be a lack of fat digestion properties. And that often happens in the 70s. I've noticed it that the gallbladder liver system might not be working as well. The pancreas is not producing enough lipase, fat digesting enzyme, and then you start to see it in the stool. Also, it reduces the toxic overload and estrogen dominance. So the toxic overload would be because our liver gallbladder, no, actually, not the liver gallbladder in this case, just the liver is part of a complex detoxification system with different phases. And one of the phases is to take a toxic chemical and attach another one to it. So let's imagine it's toxic estrogen. Estrogen metabolites, byproducts that the body wants to release. And let's imagine this was an estrogen to make it inactive, because remember, this estrogen can fit into an estrogen receptor site no matter where it is, and they're all over the body. So you have to change its shape. Stick a chemical this way, gluconic acid, let's say this way. Now it's changed in such a way that it will not fit into the estrogen receptor site. It's detoxified. Now it has to be released. So it's released through the common bile duct, goes into the upper part of the small intestine, and has to pass all the way through. If we don't have good digestion and we have constipation, let's say, this is the biggest one, especially with females with estrogen dominance. They could be doing everything right, but if they're constipated, then those estrogens sit too long in the small and large intestine, and microbes can break them down. They can take this gluconic acid, remove it, and now it's an active estrogen again, and it can be reabsorbed. And it affects not only the lining of the intestines, but gets back into the bloodstream and adds to the estrogen dominance. So another reason not to be constipated. So also, for me, what's really important, being somebody that's focused on the connection between the internal body's pH balance and what's going on in the digestive system, the ability to absorb, and that is that incomplete and digestion prevents absorption of the alkaline minerals. And we're going to look at the stomach as well and what's going on with stomach acid, because it's so tied in with our enzymatic production and our need to properly digest. And that acid, that normal stomach acid is needed to prepare minerals, to ionize them and prepare them for absorption. And if that doesn't happen, we often go out of pH balance and don't have the ability to neutralize acidic toxins and acids. So there's a big connection, I'll bring it up a couple of times, between what our internal pH is as far as taking a urine reading of it and what's going on in our digestive system. And often we can detect by what's going on with the urine if you're absorbing minerals. Okay, let's move on and take a look at some facts about poor digestion. So first of all, the Canadian Digestive Health Foundation now, and this is recent stats, states that every year more than 2 million Canadians struggle with digestive disorders, including lactose intolerance, celiac disease, and acid reflux. Now, lactose intolerance can be hereditary, but a lot of the times it's happening because of the breakdown of the little villi in the small intestine where lactose is produced. What breaks that down? Well, poor digestions, toxins, and a lot of foods like undigested glutens. Celiac disease is on the rise. Why? That's a really good question. So, and acid reflux is one of the most common conditions, sometimes known and thought of as GERD. 1 in 4 people have lactose intolerance. Muscle spasms, headaches, and spastic colon can be due to the lack of lipase enzyme and liver issues. Now, the liver gallbladder system provides buffers for the acid that's dumped from the stomach into the intestine. It also emulsifies, it provides emulsifiers to help to break down fats. And when those fats are broken down, then the enzyme lipase can come in and finish the job and break down our fats into absorbable smaller particles. All of that takes a lot of energy. And if we're having issues, especially with the gallbladder liver, there's a nerve that goes, it's just below sort of below the nipple down and below the ribs. There's a nerve in there that can sometimes be painful, and it can actually go all the way up, cause tension in the right shoulder, can even go up through the eye. So if you've ever had headaches that have gone through the right eye and have seemed to cause a lot of tension in the neck and shoulder, that can be a sign that your liver's overworking and causing this particular issue. When it combines with other sort of stress and tensions, it can really put a person into quite a headache. Many people taking omega-3 oils are not seeing results because they're not absorbing them. So if they're not absorbing them, that means that goodness, either from having good quality fish or vegan or fish-based omega-3 oils, won't give us the benefits that we want. And there are 2 ways to deal with this. One is to take enzymes, and I'm going to talk not only about all-purpose enzymes, but fat digesting enzymes. And fat digesting enzymes are a wonderful addition when a person is not properly breaking down their fat, or they have liver gallbladder issues, maybe don't have a gallbladder. So you can deal with it that way, or you can deal with it by getting a very highly absorbable omega-3. And that doesn't mean it has higher amounts. It actually means that it's been already enzymatically broken down by the enzyme lipase. And that product is on the market by a couple of different companies, Canadian companies and US. The actual technology is from Quebec, and it's called Maximil. Within the Prairie Natural line, that omega oil is called Max Omega-3 Force. And Maximil is the technology that pre-prepares the omega-3 oils for proper digestion. The capsule's smaller, and you only need really one a day to get your omega oil dosage. Also gas. We're going to talk about gas now. There are two kinds of gas. First, there is the odor gas, and that's the methane, and that's usually produced from undigested proteins. And that often happens after a while. So maybe you eat, and 2 to 3 hours later, maybe even more, you're producing a very smelly gas. So that's usually from the large intestine, and it has to do with undigested proteins for the most part. But there's another kind of gas, and it's an odorless gas, and this one's hydrogen. Hydrogen gas doesn't have a smell. So usually total gas, we would produce maybe a liter and a half a day. That's kind of normal. If you think of a liter bottle or liter and a half bottle. But if you're not properly digesting carbohydrates and they're sitting in your small intestine, you can have enough gas to produce 10 liters. And that would be an hour or so after eating, and you say, oh, I just have to loosen my pants. I can't believe it. I feel like I'm pregnant. You know, it's got that extended belly feeling right underneath the breastbones. Now, the other thing it can do is it can create this rolling gas where it just rolls through you with no odor. So that's an indication that you might not be dealing with carbohydrates very well. This is just a quick look at the digestive system. Actually, I'm going to just talk a little bit about eating, because chewing and masturbation, mastication, wow, that slipped out, in the mouth, because chewing food well starts producing enzymes. Carbohydrate enzymes especially, but also some lipase will enter. And the feel of food in the mouth helps the enteric nervous system let our body know what's coming down the pipe. And that's the esophagus into the stomach area here, and then into the small intestine, and eventually into the large intestine. All of this intestine stuff is about 22 feet. So it's got a long way to go. But here's where the gallbladder tucks right under the liver and enters in just below the stomach. And the pancreas, as you see, tucks in here, and it also enters the digestive fluids and buffers just under the stomach. Okay, let's move on now. We'll move a little faster. I like to just give you sort of a picture of just the importance and what we're dealing with beyond digesting food. So of course, food can be broken down in two different ways. It can mechanically be broken down. So you could put it in your high-speed blender, you could chew it really well, you could cut it all up. That would be the mechanical breakdown. But the enzymes are involved in the chemical breakdown. And this is a long chain carbohydrate, so complex carb, like let's say sweet potato. And these chains of sugar, different sugar combinations, have to be broken down between their links, and so a digestive enzyme almost acts like a scissors, and I'll show you another simplistic model of that. So these enzymes are themselves actually proteins, and they're folded into complicated shapes, and they're in all living organisms because they have jobs for inside the digestive system, which is really a tube traveling through our body, and then they have jobs inside our systematic body systems. So, and they do different jobs with our digestive enzymes, of course, are all involved with this breaking down process. And inside the body especially, they generate chemical reactions. Our body would be very slow if we didn't have these instigators that speed up by millions of times the reactions, and that creates our metabolism, produces all of our hormones, all of our endocrine hormones and our neurotransmitters, everything, all of our tissues, everything, and then has to get rid of the waste products as there's turnover in our cells and tissue, or repairs are made to damage. Okay, so now all I want to do is show you this. So this would be a protein, and proteins are much more complicated than this. So this is just a section of protein molecule, and here are the links between the different proteins, and here's a protease enzyme which comes in and cleaves or breaks these down. And in order for us to digest protein, it has to be broken down into amino acids completely. So if it's not, then they'll be in what's called peptides, or partially broken down proteins, and they often can, through leaky gut, get across the intestinal lining, get absorbed, and then the immune system looks at them as foreign invaders and attacks. And there is where we produce the inflammation, and it can be the major cause of our body breaking down more than it's building up because of this inflammatory process, and it can affect the whole body and decrease our longevity, increase our aging process. So enzymes to me are at the very, very basis of making sure that we get the nutrients from the good quality food that we're eating, and most of us aren't because of a number of reasons. Hopefully, as I go through this, we'll touch on them. Where do we get enzymes? Well, enzymes are found in raw food. Most of us are not eating enough raw food to supply very many enzymes. So let's look at the stomach. The stomach is really almost two compartments, or it's two chambers, even though it's not separated. The upper chamber is where the food comes in. It's mixed, it's churned and becomes a bolus or chyme, as we would call it. And if we're eating raw foods like fresh vegetables, sprouts, fermented foods, and certain fruits, or most fruits if they're in good shape, the enzymes will start working that's naturally found in those foods because of the moisture and the temperature. And then as this chyme moves down into the second part of the stomach, the enzymes start to contribute. And the amount of enzymes needed to finish that digestive process, or actually, pardon me, the amount of hydrochloric acid first that's needed to start that process of digestion will be contributed. And the body detects how much does it need. So because most of us don't have a 60% raw food diet, very difficult to do, and sometimes maybe not even the best choices for certain people, we need to contribute a lot of enzymes. And contributing enzymes means the body has to make more. And remember, it's making them for two places, internally and externally. there's a finite amount of raw material, which is basically proteins. And I'll show you some enzymes because they also usually will have a mineral or two in the enzyme complex. So another reason to, especially zinc. Zinc's a big one. So I'll just mention three fruits that are high in enzymes, which are pineapple, papaya, and kiwi. The pineapple, it's in the stem a lot, the enzymes, and but these have to be, they usually contribute protein digesting enzymes or protease, and they have to be fairly fresh. And the pineapple, you have to have more of the stem to contribute. And the enzymes are destroyed by heat mostly. So the heat is measured at wet heat of about 115 degrees Fahrenheit, 47 degrees Celsius. Can also, radiation and processing will destroy it. But if you're cooking, if it's above this temperature, you've destroyed the enzymes. Enzymes are also reduced by long time storage. They're very fragile. Even if you have usually vitamins, they're mostly always good for 6 months, maybe even a year after their expiry date, as long as you smell them and there's no odd smell from plastic leakage from a bottle. But with enzymes, really, they have to be kept in a reasonably cool, not in 30 degrees in your car all day, because they're more fragile. So the enzymes in food are the same way. And if you treat food with pesticides, preservatives, toxins, you're going to reduce the enzyme value of those foods. The best foods for enzymes and also for microbes would be to take the carrot or the leafy green right out of your garden and eat it. Those would give you the best enzymes, the highest amount of enzymes. And that's not always possible, but as often as you can, do that. Buy local and of course buy organic to get the best enzyme content. Now let's look at signs of enzyme deficiency. So this is my little fellow. I really love the way, to me, he represents constipation. So the first signs that you're going to know of poor digestion will be bloating, gas, belch, bowel disorders, where things just are not feeling good. You're cramping, or upper intestinal area where there's heartburn, and food allergies. Often food allergies won't be true allergies. They'll be allergies because your food's not being broken down properly. Also, chronic illness. Constipation, to me, is the biggest issue. And constipation, if you look at any type of stats on conditions, digestive conditions, sit really high, and constipation, chronic constipation, is one of the main ones. Now, for me, chronic constipation doesn't mean, oh, you have one bowel movement every 3 days. If you eat 3 times a day, you should have 3 bowel movements, unless you have a very, very large bowel movement, and then maybe it could be 2. Maybe you've caught 2 meals into one bowel movement. So accepting that you only have a bowel movement once every 2 to 3 days is not a good idea, both in order to keep that estrogen dominance low, and also just for the general health of your intestinal system. You want to have a good emptying time. Other symptoms can be headaches, as I talked about, with the right side of the body, that back pain, stiffness in the shoulders. There can be chronic fatigue can be tied in with this. Yeast infections will look, especially as we look at how the stomach and the stomach acid play into this. And then slow recovery from injuries. So somebody that gets just a small wound, but it doesn't heal within a couple of days. It kind of half heals, but forms a redness around it, or they always get an infection and therefore have to take care of that. And so their healing is slow. That's a good indication that your internal enzymes, what we call the systemic enzymes, are not able to mop up issues where there's a wound or an infection. They can't handle it well. And there's a direct connection between the production of those inner enzymes and the digestive enzymes. So we'll look at that a little more. So let's look at these two different types of enzymes. So we have the digestive enzymes. There's about 22 of them. They're secreted along the digestive tract, start in the mouth, as I mentioned, with the carbohydrate. So if you put let's say a cracker, let's say even a non-gluten cracker that's grain-based, immediately the saliva is going to start adding in carbohydrate digesting enzymes. And so you're getting those right away. If you put some peanut butter or almond butter on that cracker, some good organic butter, you're probably going to produce some lipase, unless you slug it down with a glass of some form of liquid. If you think of a teenager going to one of the fast food places, having a burger with a bun and a big drink, not only is the sugar and fructose affecting them, it's the washing the food down and not allowing this digestive process to start. And then that large amount of fluid, more than a cup within a meal, is really going to dilute the digestive enzymes too much, because you have to have concentration of digestive enzymes. So they're secreted starting in the mouth, all along the digestive upper part of the digestive tract, between the stomach some, but mostly in the small intestine. Responsible for breaking down food and allow nutrients to be absorbed in the bloodstream. So that's their main job. But the enzymes that are in our system are called metabolic enzymes, and there's about 5,000 of them found in every living cell. Catalyze, meaning that they break down and regulate biochemical reactions, and these enzyme levels can be deficient if the body's pH is low, if there's chemotherapy, with stress. When we're under stress, it's not a good time to eat, especially if it's a stressful episode or an argument, because the body goes into flight and fight. It goes into the autonomic nervous system, into the sympathetic, and it goes away from the parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. So we don't produce adequate amounts of digestive enzymes. We don't have a good functioning digestive system. All the energy's gone to our muscles and our brain to think and get ourselves out of negative, frightful situations. So also low stomach acid, digestive issues like low stomach acid, food intolerances, gluten and dairy, all these affect our enzyme levels. Oh, by the way, here are two samples of typical enzyme structure. So you can see they're folded, and the proteins are these sort of ribbon-like structures. That these would be joining probably peptides, and here is your mineral. And here there are two minerals in this particular one. So these are typical enzymes. I'll show them to you as I go through the carbohydrate and protein, etc. enzymes. So an all-purpose enzyme would be the natural choice to go to. And that particular enzyme, when it's all purpose, it means it's going to digest all three of our main macronutrients. And the first one would be proteins. It's going to break proteins down into our amino acids, and you want it to cover a wide range of pH, because in the stomach, the pH should be an average of 2, between 1 and 3, 1.1 to 3, that area. But when you go into the intestines, it can go up. And so protein digestion continues. Now, I'm mostly going to concentrate and give you a rough amount of what you should be looking for. Because if you're looking at enzymes on the shelf, often it'll look like Greek. Sorry about that. I thought I had that off. Somebody's got their hand up. Can Jennifer, can you see what's up? Because I'm going to continue unless there's a problem with the production of the PowerPoint or something.
You can keep going. We can answer questions at the end.
Okay, do you see this, that Colleen's got her hand raised?
No.
Okay. Can you see it now? No? Okay, so I'll continue. Please type in the chat if there's an issue, or leave your questions, and my wonderful assistant Jennifer will help until I can look at them at the end. All right, so we want to look at protease, and protease is measured in HUT. These now are the standard food chemical codex. This enzymes now are standardized. All of the enzymes that are plant-based or not produced from animals, all of these are in FCC units, and the main protease is in HUTs. Now the HUT should be between 50 and 100, 50,000 and 100,000 HUTs. The reason I'm giving you this is because if you look at an enzyme and it's about 90 capsules and it's costing $15 or $20 for 90 capsules, you most likely have nowhere near this power of being able to break down proteins. And if you've ever taken an enzyme and thought, didn't make much of a difference, it might have been that it wasn't strong enough. The enzymes are not in milligrams, they're in units of activity. And the more food that you have, the more units of activity you have to have. So the 100,000 would be if you had the turkey dinner and all the trimmings. And you might take an enzyme if you happen to have the big dessert a little while later. So that's the range of protein digesting. And there are other ones like the papain from the papaya and the bromelain from the pineapple that can help. Now let's look at carbohydrate digesting enzymes. There are a number of them. These are the key ones. The very first one that actually you get pre-amylase produced in the mouth to start producing reducing the carbohydrates down into their simple sugars. And you want a range of 11 to 20,000 of the DU, the FCC DU units. The glucoamylase is the second phase once amylase has just done its job. The alpha galactose is for beans. Of course, the lactase is for lactose, but with lactose, you really shouldn't expect an all-purpose enzyme to digest more than a bit of cream in coffee, just a small amount of dairy, because you need to take a separate lactase enzyme to deal with lactose, depending on how much dairy you're actually taking in. Invertase will help with sugars. So these carbohydrates, they break down the complex carbohydrates into the simple sugars, because if we don't have simple sugars, we're not going to be able to run our whole citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle, and eventually in our mitochondria produce ATP. This is our major fuel, is blood glucose. What we want to have low amounts of is fructose. And so if you have whole fruit as your only source of fructose, that would be a good idea. Let's take a look at fat digesting enzymes. The main one is lipase or lipase, and it used to be in FIP units, and 2,000 is a good amount, or in FCC LUs, they're 500 to 1,000 of them. Now this would be for your average, not high fat meal. This would not do a person who is eating a keto diet and they're really focused on fat. And I mean eating a lot of fat, like pork rinds and high fat foods, which some people are. And especially when they start, their digestive system is just not prepared to deal with that much fat. So this enzyme's helpful, but it's not meant for a very high fat diet. I'm going to show you another one in a minute. So fats are broken down into what's called triglycerides, or first into triglycerides and then even further into smaller components like glycerides, glycerol, and fatty acids. I'm going to show you one here. So here's a triglyceride, and this could be an omega-3, DHE, EPA, different fats. The enzyme comes along and it breaks it here. It can break it here, here, and here. But in this case, let's say it breaks it here, produces a monoglyceride, or two monoglycerides, or it leaves this glycerol attached to two of them. Breaking it down this far makes it easy for the body to digest it and absorb it. There's one thing different about fats though, and that is that they're absorbed not through the intestinal lining into the bloodstream, but the intestinal lining into the lymphatic system, and then eventually dumped into the bloodstream. And that's because they're a bit bigger than amino acids and simple sugars, and the body needs to deal with them differently. But what that means is you have to have a good lymphatic system. And I don't think we focus enough on having a good lymphatic flow in our body, and keep that going, because remember, the lymphatic system also deals with toxins. By the way, your balanced pH of 7 in the lymphatic system is what allows it to really flow and empty its toxins and carry the fat. So another reason why the internal body pH is connected through to the minerals we absorb. The other thing is as the fats are being absorbed, we're also taking in fatty acids, and in the form of our omega-3s, our fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, carotenoids like lutein, astaxanthin. Anything that's a fat-soluble nutrient gets pulled with your digestion of your fats and taken into the body. Now, if we go back to what I said about omega-3s, if we're not properly digesting fat, if we don't have enough of a good liver gallbladder system emulsifying our fats, and a large amount of pancreatic lipase, which most people don't have adequate amounts, then fats don't get properly broken down, and we don't absorb our omega-3s with fatty foods. That also speaks to, if you're taking these vitamins and fat-soluble nutrients, make sure you take them with a meal, and a meal that has fat in it, because your body needs to get that fat feel on the tongue to start this whole system of fat absorption happening, so that when the food reaches the small intestine, it can be properly processed and broken down. And that doesn't happen often with omega-3s. So often what we see is poor absorption and poor effect of taking a regular omega-3. So again, the issue is either use a pre-digested form like the Maximal type of omega, or make sure you have fat digesting enzymes to support your body, especially as we age. Okay, the last one, beyond breaking down our three major macronutrients, is to help us break down fiber. Now, not necessarily do we want to break down fiber all the way, but we do have a group of enzymes that the body doesn't produce, but can support us in breaking down hard to digest fibers. And I want to show you the cross section here of celery. So these are all the little compartments in celery. And if you look at all of the chlorophyll, and this is, remember, water soluble, so water in here, so it's going to contain a lot of vitamins, especially minerals. And unless we chew these or use a very high speed blender to break it all down, we're not getting the nutrients out of here. And so from grains, nuts, seeds, fruits, and vegetables, if we have the cellulose breaking down enzymes, these fiber digesting enzymes, they can help us extract more nutrients from the compartments of cellulose that the body is not breaking down. Okay, so and that helps us get more, especially of our minerals. Now let's go take a look at what digestive enzymes can do for you. I've talked about it, so I'm going to go through it quickly. So they can enhance the energy from carbohydrates by freeing up our simple sugars, increase the value of food, especially protein, especially if you're an athlete and you're eating a large amount of protein and you're getting those stinky gases and a lot of constipation, you know you're not breaking that protein down. So they can help with that. They can improve the absorption of amino acids, help individuals that are hard gainers or athletes to build more muscle, because you need from either animal protein or a lot of your essential amino acids. You need those to build muscle. It can improve the digestion, eliminate and elimination, and support your bowel health, strengthen the immune system. Now, part of how it does that is by removing the undigested foods that get across the blood-brain, the stomach lining or the intestinal barrier, and rev up the immune system and put it into overdrive. Also, it influences our all-over health and well-being, because if we're needing to produce a lot of digestive enzymes, and they're made of proteins, so and the energy it takes to make these digestive enzymes, we oftentimes don't have enough to make those internal enzymes and keep our body properly breaking down a lot of the toxic tissue and old used cells and proteins, or deal with wounds or clear up mucus. So we can support our internal body by helping the enzymes supply in our digestive system. Now, the question I often get asked, and I'll answer it now, is, well, does that mean we'll stop producing our digestive enzymes? And it's no, because only hormones that are on a feedback loop, where the hormone is coming from the brain, triggering, let's say, production of testosterone, and then when testosterone gets high enough, within the hypothalamus and pituitary, it cuts down production of that cycle. It doesn't work like that. Enzymes are valuable and support the body and therefore spare off the internal enzymes. So as you can see, I'm a large believer in adding enzymes, especially with our types of diets that it's very hard to avoid these days with processed foods. Okay, so who needs a full spectrum enzyme? And that would be anybody that wants to break down a large meal, especially. And if you get the heavy feeling or gas and bloating, or you're taking acid-reducing medications, because acid-reducing medications affect the production of acid, stomach acid, but they don't stop the gas, bloating, and heartburn that you still have. Enzymes can help you with that. They help indigestion and that heavy feeling of after eating, like the food is still sitting there. Constipation, irritable bowel syndrome, intestinal inflammation, leaky gut, or acid reflux issues. All of this, enzymes can help. And it's anybody who wants to unlock the maximum amount of nutrients from their food to gain muscle, to fuel energy, athletes who can, as I mentioned, consuming a high protein diet, and anyone who wants to just generally support a healthy digestion and good health. So let's take now a look at some specific areas where digestive issues happen and that do involve enzymes, but also stomach acid. So this would be your normal stomach. The two compartments would really be like here and down here. Here's the pyloric valve, where the stomach empties. This content, an hour after eating, should have a pH of 1 to 3. Very acidic. So acidic that if you put your finger in hydrochloric acid at a pH of 1 to 3, it'll burn it. And if you left it there, you'd burn your skin right off. So the stomach has to have a protective lining, and the protective lining produces buffers to buffer that acid and mucus, so mucosal and buffers. Now, in order to produce those buffers, your internal body has to have a good pH. And how do you do that? Is by absorbing minerals, and you absorb minerals and support the body in having a good internal pH, which then provides the buffers for the stomach. So they're very, very much connected, these two. But another issue happens right here at the upper part of the stomach with the valve called the lower esophageal sphincter, LES. This is the valve where once you eat food, and it's below the diaphragm, it closes off to keep the stomach acid from regurgitating. And here's where a lot of people have issues, where they've either brought this valve up so that it's open, it's up above the diaphragm and open, or they have issues with actually low stomach acid, often thought to be high. Oh, by the way, if you wanted a copy of this presentation, you could take this QR code down, or it'll be on the last slide. I'll show it to you then. So there's always this debate between over and under production. When I first formulated Prairie's betaine HCl, most people didn't understand that they weren't overproducing acid, they were underproducing it. So the symptoms are the same: heartburn, indigestion, acid reflux, GERD, gas, bloating. Whether it looks like an overproduction or under, you wouldn't be able to tell, because it's usually the valve is open and there's no protection on the lining of the esophagus. So that's going to be irritated by even apple juice. that's got a pH of about maybe 5. Any regurgitated food will have some acid in it. Remember, to properly digest, you have to have a pH of 1 to 3, very acidic. So Dr. Jonathan Wright years ago wrote about this, why stomach acid is good for you. But at the time, there was such a push to use acid-reducing medications that most people thought they must have too much acid. So there are 2 acid stomach tests that I give people, home tests. One's called the burp test, and the second one is the betaine HCl test, to see if you have low stomach acid, and if betaine HCl will help that issue. If you take down this QR code, or at the end, you could also connect with me through one of the links I give you. I can give you those tests. If you do the QR code, it's attached to the back of the PowerPoint as well. So testing your stomach acid to know if you actually do have high stomach acid. Usually, I'd say out of 100 people, maybe 5 would have high stomach acid as an issue. Most of them are low, and low amounts of stomach acid, lower amounts than what they need. And remember, we want a low pH, but we want a high amount of stomach acid an hour after a meal. That's when you need it to be the highest to jumpstart all of the other parts of the digestive system. Okay, so the role of it, of course, it acidifies stomach acid and starts protein digestion. It supports the absorption of minerals by ionizing them. Minerals, either from food or supplements, are usually in a complex, a mineral complex or mineral salt. Unless it's a chelated mineral, like magnesium bisglycinate would be a chelated mineral, or if it's chelated, it's absorbed differently. Minerals in food and a lot of our supplements, unless they're ionized, already prepared in a liquid form, such as Prairie Naturals solutions, or if you take a powdered magnesium powder and you put it and it fizzes in food and goes clear, that would be ionized. Okay, so it also helps absorption of vitamins. It helps you prepare vitamin C, beta carotene, the folate or B9, and of course cobalamin B12 for proper absorption. So we need stomach acid for those. It also renders the stomach sterile. This is really important. We think of all of the bacteria and microbes that can come in with food. We don't eat sterilized food, and we really shouldn't. But if we're bringing in viruses, for example, then if it goes through a 1 to 3 pH stomach acid, it's going to be neutralized and will remove and sterilize and remove the overgrowth of pathogens, including candida. Also, it destroys microorganisms like H. pylori. H. pylori cannot live in good stomach acid. So if somebody has an H. pylori infection, most likely they have low stomach acid. Can also destroy viruses like SARS-CoV-2, yeast, parasites, especially candida. And of course, if these travel and live in the digestive system, they affect the immune system. So the signs of low stomach acid, I'm going to go through these quickly. It can be bloating and distension, belching, and it's immediately after a meal. So a person eats and they burp all the time. They're burping as they're eating. It's because that valve is open, and so as the food goes down, air is coming up. And so the issues are usually immediately after a meal. Prolonged sense of fullness food remains too long in your stomach because it doesn't have enough acid to open that pyloric valve at the bottom to then empty the food contents into the intestine, where your gallbladder, liver, the bile comes in with buffers, and the pancreatic juices come in from the pancreas right below the stomach where I showed you, and neutralize that acid. Can have mineral deficiencies. Often this can be a cause of somebody having osteoporosis because they're not absorbing their minerals. And it's been definitely shown with iron and calcium and other mineral deficiencies when there's low stomach acid. Also with somebody taking a PPI or acid blocking drug of some kind. H. pylori, candida, and intestinal parasites can be signs of low hair loss from women, and poor quality nails. Often you try to give a person, let's say, silica, good multivitamin, a good amount of protein, and yet they're not digesting and absorbing it. So let's take a look at betaine HCl just as a supplement. The betaine part comes from beets, and it's just a natural extract. It's also called TMG, and TMG is trimethylglycine. I'm just going to show you this here. So trimethylglycine is this compound with three methyl groups. So it's actually a methylator, and you combine it with hydrochloric acid to protect the esophagus from having the effect of having hydrochloric acid on it, and then that breaks apart in the stomach, and you get the hydrochloric acid to up your stomach. A person should really know their level by doing the burp test and then doing a trial, which I call the betaine HCl test. If you're thinking that you might have a low stomach acid issue, but that you don't have an ulcer, because with an ulcer, of course, you'll get either warmth or an irritation right below the diaphragm, and which would let you know that best to neutralize that and not take hydrochloric acid until your stomach lining is healed. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly go through different conditions. So who else can benefit from adding stomach acid is chronic skin conditions, infections, acne, athletes with constipation. Sometimes the protein digesting protease in an enzyme doesn't work, but betaine HCl will work to relieve constipation from those large protein meals. Osteoporosis, as I mentioned, different types of anemia, gluten and dairy intolerance, and allergies. And seniors often, if they're not responding to supplementation, especially solid forms of supplementation, it might be that they can't absorb them. Okay, so then I'll leave stomach acid for now. I'd like to bring up one other digestive enzyme, and that would be looking at fats. Because of eating a high fat diet, either because you have a particular meal that has a lot more fat in it, or if you have maybe a keto diet, or you have liver gallbladder issues, or you're without a gallbladder, you might very well need to take in more bile to help support that emulsification of your fats, and then more lipase enzymes to help you break it down. If you've shifted your diet, it's highly recommended that you do this, especially at the beginning, and you can take more and then ease off as your body gets used to it. Or if you're having a meal with like Chinese food, that's lots of grease in Chinese food. Okay, so let's look at a fat digestive digestive enzyme. This is one I formulated for Prairie, and it's called Bile Force. It's based on having good ox bile, and this is a bovine. I prefer not to use pork-based enzymes, but this enzyme cannot be made vegan, unfortunately. But I use only bovine or cow-based extracts for bile and also for the pancreatic enzymes. It's bovine, and also only from the US, because you could get them from Mexico or China, and that was not an option for me to get a high quality extract of bile and pancreatic. So the bile helps the emulsification of the fat. This lipase is similar to the one that's in your all-purpose enzyme. Ours at Prairie is enzyme Force. And then I've added the pancreatic enzyme from a bovine source, which will have some amylase and protease, but extra amounts of lipase. And then there's some slippery elm, which is also good as an emulsifier. It's a demulcent. It helps with any type of irritation in the digestive tract. And usually you would start with 2 capsules once or twice a day with your fatty meals. Remember, this is going to help you also absorb your fat soluble vitamins and nutrients. If you're using a lot of omega-3, for example, or any of the vitamins, or like lutein, zeaxanthin for eye health, you have to make sure that you're absorbing them, otherwise you're wasting your supplements. So adding in fat digesting enzymes will help you absorb your fat and your fat soluble vitamins. And that's the key. The boost the fat soluble nutrient absorption is one of the keys, as well as if you eat fat and you have an over feeling of fullness or bloating from a fatty meal, or you have those floating stools, this is the time to add in a fat digesting enzyme. Okay, now I'm just going to throw in a few, just very quickly, a couple of other supplements that are in the Prairie Naturals enzyme line. And this is Prairie's, back one, no, forward a bit. Here we go. This is the systemic enzyme. So this serrapeptase is actually a protease, but you take it on an empty stomach, usually first thing in the morning, glass of water. Don't eat for about 20 minutes, half an hour. Let it get through the stomach. It's enteric coated, and it opens up in the small intestine and absorbs, gets into the system, and it works. And some of the things that it does are quite amazing. It's going to break down those old proteins, reduce inflammation, and it's also going to break down fibrin. So fibrin is part of blood clotting, and of course you don't want to over break down fibrin. But most of us have too thick a blood, and can form blood clots, and therefore cause issues. So breaking down fibrin, and this is the fibrin here that kind of makes and sticks blood vessels, blood cells together. Here are your platelets, but the red blood cells, and this is a big problem these days, especially as we've moved through the whole COVID phase. We're finding many more people with detrimental blood clots. So it can support that as well as digest dead tissues, cysts, scar tissues, and it can lower C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory marker linked to cardiovascular disease. So it's kind of your cardiovascular conditioner, even at 1 a day, starting with a glass of water first thing in the morning. So the other thing it does is it dissolves and clears mucus. So we've often used it with somebody that would have tight congestion. Taking it with steam and a lot of fluids supports the body in breaking down that mucus, which is thick because it's dehydrated and it has protein. So you want to break down those proteins. Here's what serrapeptase looks like as an enzyme. And Prairie's one is called Serraforce. So these are just all the different conditions, including allergy-based diseases. I mentioned that digestive enzymes can support breaking down allergens, especially in foods or any allergens that we breathe and swallow. Serrapeptase can help break down or deal with the inflammation, especially from seasonal allergies, from pollen, from dandruff, anything that's affecting our body and producing histamine and inflammatory compounds. So systemic enzyme therapy can be very valuable, not only for conditions like fibromyalgia and trauma, and also cystic fibrosis, disease scars, any type of joint issues where there's inflammation, ear, nose, and throat issues where there's a lot of congestion, and infectious diseases, because when the body's dealing with infection, it's producing a lot of dead tissue that needs to be broken down and released from the body. Okay, my last one to give you is activated charcoal. And at Prairie, we call this product Digest Force, but it's based on a high amount of a coconut activated charcoal. And charcoal should be part of everyone's Digest Force as is a good source of it. Everybody's first aid kit. It should be in your house because charcoal absorbs, activated charcoal, if it's a good quality, can absorb through every little tiny hole in the charcoal. And this is many times magnified. It adsorbs particles, both of gas. So if you have gas that's produced extra amounts of gas in your digestive system, maybe from poor quality food, questionable food with bacteria, it'll absorb any non-oily substance because it's adsorbed or pulled into these charcoal particles by hydrostatic forces. So it's pulled in, but it won't take in oily substances. It's great for drugs, intestinal gas, urea you want to clear from the body, and the kidneys should be doing that. But if the kidneys are not doing it very well, activated charcoal can, and water and anything absorbed in the water. So you should take it away from meals. It can be used as a detoxifier. If you take it away from meals, allow your food to break down and absorb into the bloodstream, and then later on use charcoal to gather any toxins and pull them through the body. It's also great for diarrhea, and as I mentioned, because of the urea with kidney health, and it's a great detoxifier. You would take maybe 5 capsules with a glass of water at night. If you have diarrhea, use less water. And if you're detoxing, you use more water with it. So I want to show you, the Prairie, the activated charcoal. So places to have it. I always carry some in my large a Mary Poppins bag. I have everything you could imagine. And if I'm in a restaurant or somebody else is eating questionable food, out it comes. It's great if you're traveling south for Montezuma's Revenge, experiencing a lot of glass with bloating and cramping, and you want something to immediately help you because it works pretty well. Also, exposure to mold or food poisoning, bad breath due to gut issues, acid reflux. Instead of using an acid blocking drug, you can use activated charcoal, and that you'd have to take that with while the food's still in your stomach. But if you're trying to protect your esophagus, absorbing all of those that acid would be a good thing. And last but not least, it's alcohol poisoning or hangovers. So some people think that you can actually prevent the major effects of alcohol, but it's not the alcohol that it's working on, it's the aldehyde compounds that are the byproducts of alcohol, or the toxins that are put in the drinks, the flavorings and colorings and all those different things. And it does seem to help hangovers. I would suggest alkalizing your body with something like a good electrolyte drink, electrolyte fuel Prairie has, as well as drinking water, taking vitamin B's, and separately take charcoal maybe just after you get home, and use the drink. Use the hydration and alkalizing drink just before going to bed. Okay, so here we are. This is the Prairie line that I've been so involved with formulating over the years, with our betaine HCl, the bile force for digesting fats, Prairie Naturals flagship product, Enzyme Force. Here's your charcoal with, it's activated charcoal with ginger. The ginger is 50 milligrams, the activated charcoal is 450, but it's actually the ginger that gets me the NPN claim and gives us the claim for digestive issues. And here is the serapeptase as the enteric coated Seraforce. So I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of Prairie and our commitment to live the healthy life and give you good quality products. And here again is the QR code to download, or you can visit Prairie Naturals at social media. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can go to linktree/rosemarie.pierce. And through there, you can access me through a number of ways, and I can get you those tests for stomach acid if you're interested. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to leave that up for a minute and pull. Jennifer, are you there?
I'm here. You have a couple of questions. I think maybe you answered them after they were asked, but just to reiterate, is there a test to check for enzyme deficiency?
No, I have never heard of one, because the enzymes are produced in so many different places. If you have diagnosed celiac disease, for example, they know that you're deficient in the enzymes that break down the hard to digest proteins in gluten. So through some conditions, but really, no, not the same way we can test stomach acid, which, is by pH. So as the pH goes lower, we know you have more stomach acid by volume as well, because of the strength of the pH. But the enzymes That's a good question. I'm sure I would have remembered if I've all the years if I've come across anything that have that's been able to test. The only way there might be is through some kind of a probe that's sensitive to a certain enzyme, but that's not would not be a common test. So there might be some obscure, very expensive testing that could be done, but not regularly.
The next one was, how do you know what your lymphatic pH is if it is off?
By testing your urine. So the urine test, that's why Prairie actually carries pH paper, because we've been very much into alkalizing the body with superfoods, with Morning Rise and Shine, with our electrolyte fuel. And so we've provided a brochure which is available on the Prairie website, and pH paper. So that's the other thing. If you connect with me, I could give you how to properly do your urine pH, because it has to be done to get the metabolic pH first thing in the morning. And it's not that it's tricky, it's just that sometimes people are given wrong directions. They're told to take it in the middle of the day because the morning pH is too low. Well, it's low in the morning because it was trying to overnight balance out your acidity. Okay, so just going back to that question, give it to me again because I took myself off, Jen.
That was, do you know what your lymphatic pH is?
Okay, so if you test your morning pH with your urine, and let's say you're within the range of 6.4 to 7.4 every morning for 2 weeks, then most likely your body is balanced with the pH within your blood, because the urine is a direct reflection of what's going on in the blood. Of course, the blood pH is a much tighter range, where within the urine it's going to be on a wider range, and you have to use pH paper that's sensitive from about 5 to 8, roughly 5.5 to 8, and you have to be within the 6.4 to 7.4 range. Now, if that's the case, that your pH is balanced and it's consistently balanced, you're doing pretty good. But now what I suggest is you test the saliva, because the saliva is the deeper pH within your body fluids. And I do not do that first though, because my experience is if you are not pH balanced within your urine from your blood, it won't properly read your saliva. It'll be kind of all over the place. And there's a very special way that you have to do this, which I also give out in this how to read your pH. But you have to make sure your mouth is rinsed. You have to spit a couple times, and you never put that pH paper in your mouth. You always take the spit out and test it with right away. So that would give you a better indication of your lymphatic system. Also, if you're in the urine pH range of 6.4 to the 7.4, always being in that 7.2 range would also be a good indication. If you're hanging out at the lower part of that range, you're most likely your lymphatic system is not properly pH balanced. Yeah, also detoxification. In order to drop toxins from the cell, your internal body fluids have to be at a pH of 7. They can exist lower, slightly lower, but they don't drop toxins, especially xenoestrogens, outside of your cells, like to release them into the external fluids, which then lymphatic system can pull away and out of the body. There's also on my website, which you can get to through my link tree, I have quite a few articles on pH balance and digestion that expands upon these subjects, which may be helpful to some.
So I have Lucy. I don't know if she's still here because it says, won't probiotics do the same? Followed by, also, won't apple cider vinegar make it before a meal help with digestion, or taking it before a meal help with digestion?
Yes, probiotics don't do the same of any of the things that I've talked about. A matter of fact, to me, probiotics are valuable, but if you're not working with your digestion and the breakdown of your food, it's going to be pretty hard to keep your microbiota in a good, healthy state and support the whole gut health. So that would be that part, and the other part was, give it to me again, Jen.
Apple cider vinegar.
Oh yeah, the
before
apple
it
cider
will help the
vinegar.
digestion.
Yes, apple cider vinegar and lemon juice do help digestion. And if, as long as you don't have an inflammation in the lining of your stomach, and you know that right away because apple cider vinegar would irritate it, or you dilute it, that is another way to help and support digestion. There's stomach acid. There are a number of things that you can do. One thing about the betaine HCl is you find the dosage through the betaine HCl test to see how many your body, the ideal amount for your body to take to break down and help support the acid production in your stomach. And eventually you need less and less. So you can rebuild your stomach acid. That's the good thing about using the betaine HCl. Not necessarily do you always need it, or maybe you only need it under times of stress or when you're eating larger meals. I'll tell you when I specifically use it is if I'm making a very potent protein-based smoothie or shake, because when I get that concentrated amount of protein, I find that 2 to 4 betaine really works well for me to break that down. And I actually, if I was working in a store and I had somebody come in, especially an athlete or a would-be athlete, weekend warrior who's buying a whey protein, like lean whey, for example, or our organic, even our vegan proteins, they're probably using a lot of it and having trouble with gas and bloating and stinky gas on top of it. And it will really help them to have 2 to 4 betaine HCl with it, whether they do the betaine test or not, just if you've got a concentrated source of protein that you're taking in. But for the average person, it's good to find out what your exact amount that your body needs to balance and get that stomach acid going.
And then the last one I had here was the QR code didn't work. I tried this one here and it worked for me, but I hopefully D. Sestito was able to get the link tree so that you can get to the stomach acid test.
Right. So through the link tree, what you have to do is just connect with me, and you can get to me because all of my contacts are on there, and I will definitely make sure that you get everything that you're looking for.
And then you had a lot of lovely compliments on thank you very much for this conference. Very interesting, wonderful information. So well explained, incredibly helpful. Thank you. Going to study up on this more now. So lovely.
Oh, great. Well, I'm pleased to hear that it was enjoyable. Thank you, Jennifer, and Healthy Planet. And we hope to see you all again.